Alrighty, so I invited Claire to join us today as a last webinar of this course. Claire is she'll talk about herself. She'll introduce herself. But I thought that would be very cool to have someone talking about the future of AI, not under the technical perspective, not under the development of new tools, but in the perspective of what is the AI brand, what is the marketing, what is the AI brand needs moving forward, where the focus is going to be in communicating AI in marketing moving forward. So Claire graciously agreed to be here today, and it's a treat. So Claire, do you like to take over? So welcome, and thank you very much for being part of this.
Thank
So
you
if you
much
can
for
just
having me.
introduce yourself and take over, that'll be amazing.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
100%. I'll mute myself.
Okay. Lovely to virtually meet you all. So yes, I am Claire Job. I work for IBM Research. And so Lucio asked me to come along today and just tell you a bit more about what I do. I've been at IBM for almost 4 years. I, in the last month, moved back to Australia after having lived in New York for the last 7 years, and the last 4 of which were at IBM. I kind of fell into artificial intelligence. I was previously a PR person through and through, and you know, sort of 15 years of agency experience in more consumer PR and sports marketing and that sort of thing. And then I was looking for a new opportunity in New York, and I just happened to have been working on a project on cloud computing at an agency, and it was an IBM cloud project. And I really enjoyed it, and I never really thought of myself going into technology. And I had a friend at IBM, and I asked her about, you know, sort of what IBM was like, and she actually said, "My boss would love you, and the reason she would love you is we have this ongoing issue of trying to explain to people what AI is, and we need as many people in our team that have more of a consumer background. And you don't even need to understand what AI is when I first started, because once you get it, and once we write the messaging and the positioning and the strategy enough for you to get it, we know the broader audience is going to get it." So I was like, okay, fine. That sounds good to me. And I did a couple of interviews in true American style. It took about 5 months of interviews and many different layers. And then I finally started at IBM on Valentine's Day. So I never forget my anniversary. But yeah, I work for IBM Research. So we're kind of the sort of pipeline of innovation, which is, you know, our sort of marketing message into IBM. And a lot of the stuff we create may or may not become our commercialized product that you would know, which is obviously Watson. And then a lot of the stuff our researchers are working on in the different areas, which I can tell you a bit more about, is really just to advance the science. So we are a corporate lab. We are 3,000 researchers across 12 labs around the world, in lots of different amazing countries. And we are, yeah, our researchers are about advancing the field. And so if something is a new area of AI, which this one I can tell you about, which is neurosymbolic AI, you know, we have strategically decided to go all in on that. We think it will be part of products in the future, but it might be 8 years off. And that is the sort of the investment that IBM makes into obviously this new world of AI. So that in a nutshell is me, Lucio. I don't know what you want me to talk about next.
So Claire, you said something interesting. They hire you for your ability to democratize or translate AI. Mm-hmm. So if the students now, my students are here at RMITo course, now they're going to go out and going to go back to either their jobs or their own companies, and they need to explain AI to either their managers or their directors, or they need to explain AI to perhaps even their partners. You know, what you've been doing the last 6 weeks. So how is yours and IBM style, IBM research style of explaining AI?
I think depending on what level you're going in at. So if someone understands that AI is literally teaching computers how to think like a human, then that's kind of where I start. And that's where I'd start with like my parents, who definitely never understood what public relations was, didn't know what marketing was, and certainly don't understand what artificial intelligence is. But I would say it is literally trying to train computers to think like humans, but also because of the capacity they have to do things faster and broader and in more domains. You know, as a human, you can be an expert in only a certain amount of domains. Computers, obviously, we can retrain and can become experts in many different domains and not even similar. So I think that's where I would start. And then for what we're doing at IBM Research, it's funny because the title of your course is What's Next. That's actually our brand. So
Yeah.
What's Next is at IBM Research, we talk about what's next in AI, what's next in cloud, what's next in quantum computing, and then what's next in science. And my baby is obviously what's next in AI. And we talk a lot about what's next is fluid intelligence. And this is where we talk about how AI right now, as we all know, if you do have any inkling about AI, is it is not robots taking over the world. We are nowhere near that. And hopefully, if we are starting this early on in terms of trust and governance, we wouldn't even get to that point because we've built it the way we wanted to build it. But we know it's very narrow, so it's not broad yet. It's nowhere near general. You know, we have limited, clean, good data. You know, very specific training is required. It's not easily adapted to the domains that you may want and different challenges. And we know that where we really focus, which is enterprise AI, that the main usefulness will be that it is fluid and it's adaptable. And so we have kind of 4 work streams that really, you know, are built to achieve this vision of fluid intelligence. And that is neurosymbolic AI, which is a sort of really groundbreaking area of science and research, which is the combination of neural networks and then now symbolic reasoning. So again, really learning from the brain and how we do things. And then really secure and trusted AI. And we talk a lot, obviously, about bias and explainability and, you know, the removing the black box that really freaks everyone out about AI. And then also we talk about governance. So we actually just announced a new breakthrough that our researchers have put out into the open source community around governance, and it's called fact sheets. So that when you're building your AI, there will become, and we talk about it like it's a nutrition label. So if you want to buy food, you want to look at the label and see what's in there. And we think AI has to be the same. It can't be these black box models that people can't train, you know, can't understand the provenance of and things like that. So that's another big area for us. And then obviously AI engineering, I'm sure you've talked a lot about, you know, a big part of AI is trying to be a time saver. So for data scientists, you know, they have these huge data crunching tasks and data prep and cleansing that just takes hours. And so if AI can be for AI, that's going to be the sort of the next step forward. And then actually we have a really big outfit in Albany in New York, the AI research hardware center. So we're looking at the chips of the future that will increase energy efficiency, the compute power, so that they are built specifically for the AI workloads that obviously you all might be running one day in your businesses. So they're the kind of 4 main areas that we focus on in this sort of quest for fluid intelligence.
So Claire, some of the people in this course, they might be taking this course so they can take the next step on their career, right? They might be seeing AI as an enabler to go ask for their manager for a better role, or even going and trying a new job outside their current job. So you are a communicator by heart, and you just happens to be in AI, right? It happens
Correct.
to be selling the brain of AI in the world for one of the largest AI companies in the world. But what would be some of the advice that you give to the students if they're looking on what's next of their career? What would give them as an advice, or how do they position themselves to not come up as an expert, but coming up as someone who has some literacy, and they can impress in a job interview, but not necessarily scare in a job interview. So it's a little bit like explaining AI or position themselves. Like, what would be the tips you would give in a job interview, whether it's internal or external, if someone wants to demonstrate they have knowledge in AI? And by the way, Jim, by the way, we're doing this here, Claire. Now we hadn't agreed on the questions. We just agreed on the topic. So she might need a few seconds just to compose her thoughts and come up with an answer. So we're doing this a little bit of like a hot grill with her. So
yeah, I think it's like any job interview, isn't it? You would think about, and whether it's a company you're in, it'd be easier if it was a company you're in, or if it's a company you're interviewing for. And I honestly would think of AI if I was trying to sort of pitch myself as a bit of an SME on what I think could add value to the business, or what value I could bring. I think look for a problem that you think AI can tackle, and whether that is within your own business, or if you were going to, it was a bank, or an insurance firm or whatever. Look for something that within that industry AI is tackling and being effective in. And then I think it's always easier to obviously tell a story and, with a sort of a mini demo that you can sort of explain yourself. And I think that's the way I would approach it. And even in my own business, if you're in a business that does not understand AI, doesn't have any interest, but you think it would add value, we talk a lot about doing pilot projects and, start small, markets to try it in. Where and even if you look at Instagram and the whole likes thing, and the fact that this is completely off topic maybe, but the fact that you can no longer see the number of likes on your post in Australia, but this is a test market and they haven't done that everywhere. And I just think things like that are really interesting. Even Instagram is doing it to test their AI to see if that's something their user experience is gonna, people are gonna like that, are they gonna hate it, is it gonna impact the usage, the amount of hours you spend on Instagram, all that sort of stuff. I think those sort of pilot projects, and then always, like everything, trying to solve an issue in a business, I think would make, if I went to a startup and maybe they didn't use AI, but I thought they should, and you're trying to pitch to a CEO that doesn't understand AI. I think that's the way I would go personally.
I'm just writing a couple of questions. But another thing is, out of your role as communicator on you're right, it's so interesting because the topic of this webinar, it's what you are about on IBM research, is what's next, right? It's this is ongoing nucleus of foresighting, Having said that, Claire, there's this perception that AI, it's pretty big on the B2C or B2B. There's these kind of like two polarizing discourses around AI being more focused on automation. It's really good for B2B or manufacturing, but it's not good here, not good there. So you see where I'm coming. Out of the things you've been doing and the foresight and the research, there's anything that you guys even talk about B2B versus B2C or commercial versus industrial? How, if anyone, I have a few students here who are very interested in the discussions about AI marketing being more on B2B or being more on B2C. So just talk to us how you guys at IBM Research Lab, how do you classify those things? Do you have any B2B or B2C, or it's industry orientated? How do you even communicate those things?
Yeah, at the moment, I think because we are like AI for enterprise, obviously, we have clients, I think, in a lot of different areas, but a lot of the research side of clients, are finance, where you can take huge amounts of information and distill and then learn from it quickly. So whether that is, deciding if someone should get a loan, Obviously medical, we do a lot of work with, you know, what's in health and in the medical fields with reading, you know, hospital records and trying to suggest pathways for you know, treatment. So I mean, honestly, I think we kind of touch a lot of different areas, but definitely probably I don't know if that's a good answer, but yeah, I think we're in a lot of different fields. And then some of the most interesting ones I see the impact is where we do, you know, sort of show that AI can be also 24/7. One of my favorite examples we've talked about is we have developed an AI actually in Europe with a lot of the bridges in Europe are obviously old and crumbling, and it's, you know, some of them, there's some accidents, and you know, they're falling into the sea and all these sorts of different things. And we have developed them, it's kind of a combination of edge computing and AI, where it is drone technology that is constantly flying around bridges and mapping them and looking for issues, and then alerting the human. So where, if you imagine how that was done in the past, it was, you know, maybe once every few years a human would abseil around a bridge literally looking for rust or cracks, and we could now do that with drone technology and then an AI that's mapping it to see, you know, have there been changes and what's the weather patterns that are coming up that might have changes on it. And I just thought that was one of the most interesting uses of AI technology. And, you know, we all do talk about this constant, it's, you know, human and machine, not man and machine, human and machine working together. It's not replacing the human, but I think that's a really interesting one where equally it's much safer for a drone to be flying around a bridge than a human abseiling around it. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting case study, but I don't know, we don't discuss, I mean, personally from my side, obviously with IBM Research, it's more the clients come to us saying, can you help us with this pilot project in this area? We've done not random things, but different things. Like we helped a perfume company design new perfume, you know. It was just, we've had some really different, weird and wonderful projects to work on with different areas of industry.
Claire, or I'm gonna flip a little bit here. I'm gonna go to bots and conversation AI.
Mm-hmm.
This cohort here took a lot of interesting bots in this course, this run of this course. A lot of interest on producing their own chat bots and make these as either customer service or automation or even knowledge management, understanding manuals and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been seeing a lot of work popping up from universities around avatars, which is just as an interface, for conversation AI. So I saw this really interesting case, I think it was Swinburne University here in Australia, when they created something for uni students who were training with patients with Alzheimer or dementia.
Mm-hmm.
So they will have this avatar, which was actually a chat bot. It was all a chat bot, just had this avatar. So the question, and by the way, you said like a few minutes ago, say, I'm not sure if I'm giving the right answer. You gave an amazing answer for a pretty shitty question. So I'm not.
I don't know about that.
You gave an amazing answer for a pretty bad question. So I'll make sure, because I'll make this way harder than it should be. Having said that, have you guys out of IBM Research Lab doing anything regarding the double question regarding conversational AI or bots? And what's your opinion about avatars as an interface for the conversational AI?
Yeah, I think I mentioned when we were talking over the weekend that we have these things, and they're very well known, obviously, with our competitors as well, where we take on grand challenges. And we have a VP of AI out of Haifa in Israel, which is one of our labs, and she's phenomenal. I do love that a lot of our VPs of AI are female, by the way, and she is phenomenal. And she is, you know, she leads our mastering language, which is what we call it. So, you know, all of the NLP, NLU, even like what languages AI is built in and trained in, and you know, she does a lot of that kind of chatbot. Sorry, now I've got to fly. Sort of customer assistance advancements. And one of the things we did was, you know, IBM research is always about taking it like a lot of steps further and then maybe dialing it back into what goes into product. And one of the best grand challenges we've done was after Watson first, you know, appeared on the scene and appeared on Jeopardy and won Jeopardy, they put a memo, in, you know, good American terms, a memorandum out to the company and said, what's next? Like literally, what do we do now? We've taught an AI to play Jeopardy. Before that, it beat a chess champion with Deep Blue. You know, what do we do next? And one of Aya's team, this VP in Haifa, they said, what if we could teach an AI to debate and debate with humans? And so 8 years later, and that's like the length of this particular grand challenge, we unveiled in San Francisco at our annual conference when we all used to meet in person at Think, we unveiled the first sort of human versus AI debate with a moderator. It was an Oxford style debate with a company called Intelligence Squared who runs debates all the time. And it was super interesting because this, you know, obviously it had a huge corpus of information. It was LexisNexis, Wikipedia, and it found out the topic it found out the topic 3 minutes before the debate started. And then it debated a world champion debater from the UK. And it was an amazing display. But what was really interesting about it as well was we asked people before and after to vote, so before or against the motion. But then at the end, we also asked them to rate the human and the AI on, you know, how did they affect you emotionally? Did they teach you more? And a few different things. And even though the human debater won, and no one ever really thought that AI would win, that wasn't the point. It was more like how much it moved the needle for you. And it was amazing because the AI consistently moved the needle for teaching the crowd more than the human debater. And
Wow.
I think that's just a really interesting thing when you're thinking about chatbots, and obviously the future is where it would serve that person who maybe is on the other end of the line with with a customer trying to sort of remember all their training and all the different possibilities, that, you know, that AI is purpose built to be more intelligent than us, because it is going through this huge corpus all the time and finding you many different responses. So I think if people are thinking about chatbots for business and that sort of thing, that is your unique selling point about why you would use AI over, trying to train and worrying about HR turnover of your, sort of customer service staff and all that sort of stuff. When you put so much training into one person, the AI is never leaving you. So I just think that's a really interesting way of looking at chatbots. Yeah.
So you would, if you're going back to this piece of the debate where the avatars ranked well in a couple of features as being teachable and educative, all this stuff, would it be fair to assume that if there was not even an avatar, if it was just a voice or just a text, not just, but it was voice, there was no facial interface, that would not rank that well, would not score that well? Like, what are the facts that you add? I'm giving the answer. The question is simple, Claire. Sorry. What would be the facts that you would attribute in ranking that well?
We purposely. So Watson has always had a voice, and it's always been male and all this sort of stuff. And so we, from a marketing perspective, obviously we needed to stay well away from Watson. No one could look at our grand challenge and think, I can ring IBM tomorrow and I'm going to be able to buy an AI that does that. It was always positioned as IBM research. So we did many things. We actually did build we called it the monolith. So it was, sort of a 6-foot narrow sort of screen that was on stage. So you had the human, the moderator, and then you had debater. We gave her a voice, a female voice. So we again were different to Watson, and also, just not always wanting to be male. And then we actually did some graphic design, and there were different states. So if she was thinking, we actually use circles, and so the circle would just be going around, and then if she was speaking, it would be a line just going back and forth. I do think you need some humanization to AI without going to the furthest extent of freaking people out. So we chose to do that. I think we also built humor into the AI, so it did have like a human in the loop, as we call it, where there were versions of the moment of the speech, you know, where there was a built-in script, and it would trigger if it had been trained that it was the right moment, it would trigger a joke, or something. Like we've also just created a TV show with Bloomberg, and one of the debate motions is all about the space race between China and the US. And at the end, the voice says, "Good luck to the human debaters here on Earth." And so you're just like always trying to find just a little thing that will raise a little smile, and you know, and the human debaters on the TV show had a little chuckle, and then they move on. And so I think if you can humanize the AI, but obviously I think you've obviously probably also discussed the backlash of when it is so frustrating that you know it's an AI and it's trying to act like a human, and you're like, just go away and put me onto the human when you are using it for customer service. So it's a fine line. We can have more fun when it's grand challenges and it's getting press.
I could talk about this forever. Claire, would you be able to share the case study or point us or point me to the right direction so I can see the videos and things so I can share with the class?
Yeah, I'd happily. We actually made a movie about the debater. So you see the sort of grand challenge journey before it then appears in San Francisco. So we launched that with The Verge, which is another good one to follow. So I'll send you the links and you can watch that movie.
That's amazing. Hemanje, Phil, Roberto, Sindhu, because you're here listening very patiently and attentively, I guess. Would you ask any questions to Claire? I have a few more, but I'll put mine on hold in respect to you, please. If you have any question, you can either put your microphone or you can type in and we can read it.
Hi, Claire. This is Sindhu. So nice to have you here. It was really nice listening to all the work that you've been actually working on. Sounds very exciting, right from a James Bond movie to me. You know, a lot of technology, and great to hear you talk about it. So I did have a question. Now, based on all the research work that you've done, if I were to say, if I were to ask you to say, what would be probably the top 3 industries that you think where you will see more use of AI in the coming, let's say, the next 5 years? What would those be?
I apologize because my 2 children have just returned home. So if you hear screaming, that is why. So hi, Sindhu, lovely to meet you. Top 3, I mean, I think finance, insurance for the trust and the bias side of things. What else does everyone our side of things work on?
Health?
I'm trying to think. Yeah, and then I think health is, I mean, obviously it's huge for us with Watson Health. But yeah, I think it would probably be finance, and then yeah, sort of insurance, and then yeah, definitely health.
Okay. All right.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sindhu. That's a good question. Anybody else? Anyone else? I do have a list. Claire sent me a list, and I put in PowerPoint. Claire, I will share before we go with your 3 things to do. But Roberta.
Yeah, hi. First, thanks, Claire, for talking. It's very nice to hear you. I have like a more a question about bots. Like, if, for example, are the bots now the tech that we have nowadays at the market? Are they able like to search for answers through the web or through different websites, or the answers that they will interact and reply to the audience, like to people that interact to them, will be only questions like pre-established, or like from specific keywords? Like how smart are the bots nowadays?
Yeah, I think they're still pretty much built from a corpus. From definitely even the work we do in the Grand Challenge, you know, it was things like LexisNexis and yeah, Wikipedia, and then we sort of you know, sort of evaluate the strength of an argument that we found. It looks at, you know, sort of how relevant it is to a topic, how good the English is, you know, all those sorts of things before it serves it up as its, you know, sort of best answer. So from the things that we've done, yeah, I would say it's still very much, you know, it's pulling from the corpus that you've chosen to train it with.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roberta. Claire, 5G. Now it's a deal. It's 5G is the deal now. I mean, before Apple, there's no really 5G, isn't it? As a general sense, is anything coming from IBM Watson? IBM lab, a research lab that was waiting until the infrastructure 5G being established to say now we can make this happen? Like what is IoT or VR, or there's anything now that when 5G now it's established or become established now, you see more and more investment from telecoms.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything in the pipeline, anything exciting that you're seeing popping up that's being enabled because of 5G?
Yes, even though it's definitely not my area of expertise at all. I hope it to become one day, because obviously it's super exciting, and IBM has very recently talked about, you know, our efforts from the main business going into 5G, but I definitely don't know a lot about it. But from the things I've heard from our researchers, and that it has always triggered with me, I think is just a really interesting observation, is the safety aspect of 5G. So for example, I had it explained to me that if you do have robots and you now have them, say, on oil refineries out in, you know, the North Sea, and they, through AI training and obviously remote workers, you know, sort of running them, you can just save literally, you know, lives, because they're no longer in these dangerous, you know, roles. And I just think 5G and edge computing that is allowing that kind of distance operation and, you know, and allowing computers and robots to do it, I think that's really interesting. And even, you know, the sort of capacity of 5G, when I talked about the work we do with the monitoring the health of bridges, you know, the fact that that can all be done now, you know, it can be done quickly, it can be done every day, like all those sort of things which, you know, 5G allows you to do, and edge, you know, smaller devices and that sort of thing, sensors, a lot of that is now opening up, which I think, you know, for training AI, we all know that, you know, the more we can train AI, the more data we can get, the better and smarter it's going to become, and the more advances we're going to make. So I think 5G will definitely play into that sort of the future advancements happening quicker.
Great. Remanji, Phil, Roberta, Sindhu, we are about to, look, I promised Claire would be finished by 6:15, where I asked her to be available. It's already past there. I do have one more question, but I would like to give the floor to you before me, if you have any other questions to her. Claire, what are you working right now, or that, of course, under confidentiality and privacy, of course, I understand that. But what are you working right now that's pretty interesting? What are you trying to communicate to the world right now coming on AI?
I think I mentioned earlier that we are sort of putting our I guess, and I definitely don't want you to ask me what is quantum computing, Lucio, because I know you said the other day you might ask me that, and I've like all day been going, please don't ask me what quantum computing is. But we are talking a lot about how you know, for the era of accelerated discovery that we all need, and obviously the year we've all just lived through and are continuing to live through with the pandemic, we've really seen how much we need science. And there is this era of accelerated discovery that classical computing, it's just kind of, it's running out, it's, you know, it's reached its limits. And so we talk a lot about how, you know, when we think about some of the complex problems in the world that we're going to need to tackle, even the ones that we don't even know exist yet, classical computers, you know, really have run out of, you know, their bandwidth of what they can tackle. So we believe that that kind of combination of artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and then in the future, quantum computing, is what will allow us to take on problems that have sort of exponential number of variables. And so we talk now a lot where we used to be quite siloed at IBM Research. It's like, oh, you work in AI. Oh, you work in cloud. Oh, wow, you're the cool kids that work in quantum. And now I think the future for us, even next year, is going to be, we're not going to work even in those silos. So, you know, I've taken 4 years to try and get my head around AI to the point where I've got to, and now I have to understand cloud and quantum. And I think that's something that we at IBM, just for a little plug for IBM, we're in a really, really unique position, being players in those areas, and our acquisition of Red Hat in cloud. So I think, yeah, for us, it's going to be, what does the world look like? Because we are, you know, the sort of science and the research side, what does the world look like when those three things actually come together? And we don't even know yet. And so that's really exciting. That's probably what's next for us next year.
Thanks, Claire. I know you took the time to prepare what's next in terms of actions for the students. I'll share the screen because I placed that in the screen, and then you can talk that through. So students normally ask me, what do I do? What do I sign for? How do I keep myself updated? And Claire was really nice bringing together these 3 points. So do you want to talk through?
Yeah, I mean, I did say to Lucio, I was doing a shameless plug at the beginning for IBM. So I would encourage you to sign up for our research newsletter, and you can go to IBM, our website, so research.ibm.com. And then I think we have an okay YouTube. It's going to get even better next year, but our Twitter is really good for sort of breaking news, and then also even telling you like where our researchers are talking, where they're keynoting. So if you are very interested in enterprise AI, I would definitely suggest following IBM Research. Then when I was, I guess, first learning about AI, and then equally where I saw my comms counterparts wanting to get our stories placed, I then started reading and watching things like Fortune's newsletter, Eye on AI. I love Vanity Fair and their section on the Hive for technology. I just love the way it's written. Inside AI for Rob kind of gives a lot of his personal thoughts around announcements and things like that. Quartz is obviously a good one. And then if you're into Medium and you follow a lot of blogs, Towards Data Science is a really good one, for sort of, it often, you know, sort of finds the breaking news and sort of pulls it all into one place. And then definitely all the tech press like ZDNet, TechCrunch, Gizmodo. And then I would just say as well, if you are in a business where you're trying to get them to start using AI, or they sort of are using AI and you want them to do more, if you're not already, obviously attending conferences. And in the pandemic world, where a lot of the conferences are now virtual, obviously much easier. But I would suggest like ask your business to give you budget to attend some of these conferences, because obviously companies like ours are there telling you our latest and greatest breakthroughs. And then often we partner with Watson, so you can see what we're offering on the product side. And then I was saying to you, obviously, Lucio, that if they're, you know, if your students are really into the deep tech, we support a number of top AI conferences throughout the year. We are always there. Our, you know, scientists are submitting papers, they're doing workshops. We then obviously now at the moment have digital booths, used to have physical booths where we would show you demos and things like that. And so I just listed as well some of the top ones that we consider out of IBM Research to be the ones where the best sort of work is shown.
Thanks, Claire. What company is doing something? I mean, besides the of course the enablers, the Facebooks and Googles and the AWSs and IBMs, but like brands, who's actually doing pretty cool? Like, there's any brand that pops up to your mind that's doing cool work, exploring AI in their marketing?
Who do I think is doing good AI? Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm not really in that world so much. I'm definitely more in the, so if I was looking academically as well, I would also tell you that we have a partnership with MIT. So we have the MIT IBM Watson AI Lab, and there's some really cool stuff coming out of there. MIT is obviously one I would always watch as well for the different advancements they're making. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know so much on consumer brands. Obviously, I think I'm more just like in the sort of, you know, sort of academic space, and then obviously social.
Yeah, sure. So Claire, any before we wrap up, I share the your LinkedIn in the beginning. I am cool with if someone from this course hit you up on LinkedIn and reach you is okay.
Yes, of course, happy to.
Awesome. Any last words to the team? Like what? I mean, you gave so much. You talked about definitions. You talked about categories and industries. You talked about the cool things you are communicating, the cool things you have just done. The debate is amazing. We cover bots. We talked about quantum computing. I don't have an idea how to explain quantum computing myself. I have no idea. I know the qubits. That's what I know. Maybe
Yeah.
Phil, next semester, come and explain to us about quantum computing. So we talked about the resource that you suggest everybody to be following to keep themselves updated. So this is being a master class with Claire McIntyre in artificial intelligence. Like, what a treat. I'm super happy to have had you here as a guest from RMIT Future Skills, AI in Marketing. I guess the students have had a great opportunity, once in a lifetime, to have this opportunity to be listening directly from you, interacting with you. So thank you very much. Any last words before you're going?
I think that, my last words would be, I have never found a job I enjoy as much as this one, but there is never a day where I'm not challenged and think, I am not the smartest person in this room, and that's okay. I think, we all work lots of hours, and you might as well be doing something that's super interesting and could potentially change the world. So keep going on your path in AI.
Thank you, Claire. So I would like to ask you to pause. I'm going to take a print screen. Usually we use here